Have you ever felt like a loser? Like a nobody, cast aside like some leopard in society? I would bet all the wise men's gold that everybody at some point this year has felt like a loser. We feel like losers when life seems to be against us, when everything we do feels like a big fat mistake. We feel like losers when our world gets turned upside down, when the rug gets ripped out from underneath us. We feel like losers when we are stuck, all alone, stuck in the chaos of our crisis with no way out. We feel like a loser when our hard-earned education, skill sets, and work experiences are shoved aside, and we are forced to leave our job or reimagine our professions or even learn a new trade. Yep, congrats. You're a loser. I'm a loser. We are all losers. I know. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Today, I want to be a loser. I want to feel like a failure. I want to socially distance myself and my soul from everyone so that I can feel depressed and isolated and all alone." No. Nobody wants to be a nobody. And yet, Christmas teaches us that God likes to use nobodies to do what nobody else would imagine they could do. For some reason, however, we think that God can't or won't or doesn't just use anybody. That God's love is not for everybody. But the Christmas story is all about how God uses nobodies to remind everybody of how love is for losers. I mean, think about it. God's love can only be fully experienced by those willing to let go fully. Letting go fully is essentially losing. Losers are those willing to let go of those man-made trophies. You know, the winner, winner, chicken dinner way of life that says, I've got to be on top of the social food chain. Christmas is actually not about who gets the biggest bonus check, who gets the most expensive Christmas present, or who throws the largest dinner party. But let's be real, none of that is happening for anybody this year. Christmas is not about the perfect house decor or that flawless family Christmas photo. Christmas is not even about who donates the most money to the charity in order to get the biggest tax write-off at the end of the year. Although, please note that we will graciously receive any of your tithes, offerings, or donations at Buechel Park Baptist Church. No. Christmas is actually about love. And love is actually about letting go. Letting God do what God does best, transforming hearts, minds, and souls. This is why Christmas, and even love itself, is harder for the somebodies than the nobodies. Because the somebodies have more to lose. And if love requires the act of losing, then the somebodies have more work to do. Lucky for us, we have a cast of Christmas characters who teach us all how to be losers. Let's start with Matthew's Gospel, who highlights Joseph. Now, Joseph is not the biggest loser out of them all, but he's certainly not at the top of the corporate ladder. He's a carpenter, a laboring yet educated job that requires lots of hands-on experiences that will certainly leave calluses on your palms and maybe even your 401k plan. And yet, God uses this loser a middle-class man who ends up marrying out of wedlock a very pregnant woman. He's a good old boy who actually has to let go of his ego and pride to be part of something bigger than himself, something greater beyond his wildest dreams. Yes, Joseph was a loser who most likely would have been shamed on social media, who probably even needed a therapist to process his own stress and anxiety around the holiday season. But Joseph, at the very least, shows all men that they can be strong while being weak, that men can actually stand beside a powerful woman and not lose their own power, that men are capable of sharing the spotlight, sharing the history books with others who don't fit into social norms. All right, let's move on to John's gospel. A gospel that highlights John the Baptist, a homeless hipster, locust-eating wannabe travel evangelist who ends up losing his head in the end. John the Baptist is a big deal now, but wasn't then. He was a rogue radical revolutionary who would have been arrested protesting in the streets, speaking out for justice, and labeled as some liberal loser. And yet, God uses John for an incredible job of preparing the way for Jesus, his crazy cousin that would have been barred from the family reunion for his socialistic sermons on the Mount and religious views on love that always ended up leading towards some non-traditional lifestyle. All right, we'll move on to Luke. Luke, who has the largest cast of losers. I mean, you've got Zachariah and Elizabeth, an old couple incapable of baby-making copulation. Zach is a weary pastor, and Lizzie is a lifelong stay-at-home wife. Zach wanted a son to take over his pulpit, and Liz simply wanted a child to give her social standing in the community. It takes decades of prayer, lots of marriage counseling, and a body full of wrinkles before God works this miracle out and gives them John, the liberal preacher off his rocker. So God uses old people just like God uses young people. But old people often feel like losers, left out of God's miraculous work. This most likely stems from societies who push old people to the margins of anything meaningful. But that's never true with God, who can use anyone, even the aging losers of our day, to do something scientifically unimaginable. But let's get to one of the biggest losers of them all, Mary. Mary, a young nobody. Virgin or not, she's a woman in a world that treats all women like cattle to be sold, property to be owned, and bodies like reproduction convectional ovens. Mary is a loser who, according to Facebook feeds, got knocked up overnight and loses her mind and makes up some crazy angel story. Mary is sent away, hiding her growing belly that's too off-putting for any family photo op. She ends up staying with her beloved and also big-bellied cousin, Elizabeth. These two large and in-charge women band together, creating a power duo that produces a magnificent and miraculous moment in history. Mary, one of the biggest losers, finds her courage to even speak out for those stuck in lowly places, reminding the world that God uses losers to bring the winners to their knees. That God uses the nobodies to show the somebodies that God's justice, mercy, and life-altering love leaves nobody behind. But let's not forget about the blue-collar losers. Those sheep-keeping herds people who work the night shift at an unlivable minimum wage. These losers are at the bottom of the bourbon barrel. Social outcasts stuck in generational poverty. They are judged and stereotyped as the dumb redneck who takes pride in bearing arms and protecting their small piece of the pie. These hillbillies are built into the caste of nobodies, visited by the angelic, heavenly somebodies. These trailer park people are the first to receive the good news for all people. Christ is born. All these nobodies, Joseph, John, Zach, Lizzie, Mary, and the sheep-hugging herds people experience the love of God by simply being losers. Folks willing to let go of social norms, professional expectations, and even religious rules in order to embrace something bigger, to experience something greater. Love. But love is for losers. And Christmas is for nobodies. Christmas is for nobody. For those who have dysfunctional families that argue, split apart, and even become estranged. Christmas is for nobody. For those who can't afford presents, those struggling with depression, and those even stuck in hospital beds with cancer and COVID. Christmas is for nobody. For those rejected by parents because of their sexuality, those imprisoned because of one bad choice, those even fleeing their homes as immigrants and refugees. Christmas is for nobody. For those trapped in the shadows of society, sitting in the darkness, looking up toward the heavens at night for something more. But then, in the bleak darkness of it all, the heavens seem to unwrap, opening up new possibilities, and the gift of good news is given to a bunch of nobodies. But at the end of the day, the biggest nobody, the biggest loser of them all, is God. God is a loser. A loser who constantly lets go. Lets go in order for love to be free. In order for love to be held lightly by all with human hands. God is the biggest loser of all because God keeps trusting humans to share love. Well, Christmas is for nobody, and yet everybody receives God's gift of love, wrapped in flesh, inviting us all to keep being losers. This year, this Christmas season, I wonder how you might let go and let the love of God enwrap your being. I wonder what it would look like for you to be a loser and to keep sharing love with the nobodies, the somebodies, and maybe just anybody. Amen.